Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Soroyce. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, the one and only working class podcast. We're the Blue Collar Ballers, John and DJ. Check us out on our Facebook page at Armchair Fantasy Football, on Twitter at Armchair FF Pod. I'm on Twitter at Armchair Kingpin. John is on Twitter at John2977. And you can email us at armchairfb@gmail.com. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Podbean. And you can find our videos on YouTube. Just search Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Welcome to the show, John.
What's up?
What a glorious week in fantasy football it was, huh? Did you enjoy it as much as I did?
I worked all weekend, but I won all three of my matchups.
Well, I'll have you know that I didn't work yesterday, but I didn't really get to enjoy... I still have not gotten to enjoy a win in the Keeper League because I don't know what was going on with Red Zone yesterday, but it was buffering and buffering and buffering and buffering to the point where it was basically unwatchable. Starting at about, toward the end of the 1 o'clock games. And then I'm like, well, I've been excited about the Cowboys and Patriots game, so I'll watch that. And I watched about the first quarter, and then the channel that hosted it on Hulu went dark. So I didn't get to watch much football despite the fact that I was home with the intention of doing so. But I dominated in fantasy. I'm talking domination.
Is it bad? I didn't look at it.
Pinned up against the wall level domination. Big time. Scored 200 in our Dynasty League. And yeah, you could say 199 all you want, but that's 200. So we're going to do it a little different
200
today.
is 200.
200.
199.
No, 199 is 200 if you round up.
Oh, I didn't know there was rounding up in leagues.
There is in
Must
my
be a new
world.
thing.
So, we're going to do a little different today. John is running a little behind, so I wrangled up some news for you guys, news and notes. So, hopefully I'm on point and didn't miss anything. If I did, I'm sure somebody will tell me. But you know what? Get over it. I did the best I could. I'm not usually the news guy.
No, it's usually me.
So, I'm going to start with a little defensive news, not offensive news, John, and that is LA Chargers star safety Derwin James is back practicing, and all indications are that he's looking very good, which might not seem like fantasy news, but it kind of is, because this dude is going to be a huge addition to a secondary, John, that's already playing extremely well. And oh, by the way, the Denver Broncos are on deck, so you might not want to fire up Cortland Sutton this week.
Derwin James is amazing.
He is. That's going to be great.
He'll make an immediate impact that affects the defensive rankings a lot, so I don't think you can sit there and say, Chargers are actually pretty good against wide receivers, but this just boosted them more.
And they've been shutting down and embarrassing opposing quarterbacks, so it's a really good addition to really just not make that secondary relevant, but to strengthen it more than anything else. So moving on to the next bit of news, as John says, Marlon Mack, John, is out again this week, according to Frank Reich. So, Williams, you got to fire him up. And I told you he might be the lead guy, and you poo-pooed me on that one. And we both thought that Nyheim Hines was going to be really relevant last week. Not the case. Only got you about 9 in PPR, which we expected a lot more than that.
They expected over 10.
But Jonathan Williams just steamrolled in that game, and it looks like he might have an opportunity to do that again this week, John. What do you think of Jonathan Williams?
He looks pretty good. I mean, I really thought Jordan Wilkins being activated... not activated, but coming back from injury or cleared from injury. I figured he was probably going to be involved, but it did not seem the case at all.
I just hearken back to when Jonathan Williams was in Buffalo, and he was supposed to be the heir apparent to LaShawn McCoy, but kind of didn't work out that way for behavioral reasons or off-the-field reasons, whatever the case may be. So he does have talent. He's a talented guy. Problem is he's facing Tennessee this week, which isn't the best matchup, but he'll be out there, and it will not be, I can assure you, who's that other loser on the team that you just mentioned? Yeah, okay.
Pascal?
No, the running back.
Oh, Jordan Wilkins.
Yeah, that loser. So you can just write off Jordan Wilkins for the rest of his career from a fantasy standpoint, because he gone. Coach Gruden told reporters, unfortunately, that Hunter Renfrow may be done for the season pending further tests on a potential broken rib and punctured lung, John.
Ooh.
This is disappointing. Renfroe is really starting to click. If you look at the game this week, we'll get into it, but a disappointing game all around. And just add to the fact that Renfroe may be done for the rest of the season is pretty disappointing and unfortunate for owners of Hunter Renfroe. I will tell you, my opinion, next year in Dynasty Leagues, if you have him, stash him. Don't cut him because he's going to be pretty good next year. I think he's going to continue his evolution as a slot receiver, and he's got a bright future, I think, Hunter Renfroe. Thoughts?
It's going to hurt them quite a bit. I think Tyrell Williams will see a bump in value, get more targets.
Maybe.
Same with Waller. I cannot see how Jacobs will not be used more in this passing game. But he should see more targets out of this. But you never know. They could be Jalen Richard getting more targets. But, I mean, do you think...
Richard, actually, that's a good point. Richard could be the main beneficiary of this.
Or do you think it's Mr. Zay Jones?
It could be. We haven't seen much of him since his arrival there, but
does this solidify him a starting spot now?
It could. Definitely. All right, moving on. Devonta Freeman listed as limited in practice on Monday, so if I'm seeing that probably tells me that he's going to be out there this weekend, and God knows they need him. If you guys wasted your fab money on Brian Hill, just remember I told you not to do that, and he is a non-factor, and Quadri Olison actually got a touchdown this week. But Freeman would be a much-needed return or a much-needed addition to that team because they looked bad, John, against a bad defense. I mean, Tampa Bay's good up front against the run, but their secondary is the worst in the NFL.
And they did nothing with the opportunity.
They couldn't get anything going. Anything. And frankly, Ridley had a decent game, but that was all garbage time. And the touchdown was from Matt Schaub, so that was just a mess of a game, which we'll get into that.
And they were at home, which made it even worse.
And they were at home. So looking like Freeman will be back this week. Andy Reid, optimistic that Tyreek Hill will suit up despite the hamstring issue. My only concern there is we lived this before, you and I, with Adam Thielen in the tag team league, and he went out there and immediately re-injured that hamstring. So that's a concern. Anytime you have an injury like that, a soft tissue injury, John, the likelihood of being re-injured is fairly good.
Yeah, high.
But if he's healthy, I think you gotta roll Tyreek Hill out there regardless and take that chance. All right, Pete Carroll hints at a timeshare between Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, stating that, quote, Carson is a guy who is a big part of our team, and we'll do everything we can for him. Not a very ringing endorsement there. And this is also a quote from Mr. Carroll. Competition is a beautiful thing, and there's no reason not to get Penny back in there next week. I don't know why Pete Carroll's just figuring this out, John. I've been telling him all year that Rashad Penny is a better running back than Chris Carson. It's just the truth. He's a more talented running back than Chris Carson. He's shown more efficiency since day one than Chris Carson. And this week, when given a real opportunity, John, after Chris Carson did, guess what? Fumbled twice, and I know one of them was probably credited to Russell Wilson, but Chris Carson dropped that ball. Wilson snapped it. Wilson fell on the sword, and he said, well, I changed the play at the huddle or at the line of scrimmage, but I guess he didn't hear me. Well, when the ball gets put in your hands, you got to hold on to it. And Chris Carson just shows a huge inability to do that. He's not the talent that Rashad Penny is. And we're finally seeing that. We finally saw that this week, and Rashad Penny took the bull by the horns, and he ran with it. He took the ball and he ran with it. Now, hopefully, he understands the situation that he's in, because if he can do that again this week, he might start to distance himself from Carson. I don't think that's going to happen this week. I think it might be a 60-40 split, but I think you're definitely going to see a bigger piece of the pie for Penny. Your thoughts on this?
I think Penny deserves an opportunity to get the timeshare. I know we have touted Carson because of his usage, but I believe...
Well, I haven't touted him.
Not touted him, but you know what I'm saying? His usage, he has every opportunity to build up those points.
Right.
I think, quote me on this, I could be one off. I believe this was Carson's 9th fumble or 8th fumble.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know he's fumbled
8th or 9th.
quite a bit this
and he
season.
Leads the league in fumbles, I think.
Because he's not that
John.
good,
So the thing is, Carson's not lost the job, I should say, but he's definitely has shed light on this moment for the Seahawks to give Penny every opportunity. But the problem is we got to see Penny earn this opportunity, and he's had chances before, but injuries kept him from it. So his productivity wise, he's good. He's good.
I disagree with you there because I don't think he's ever really gotten a real opportunity.
No, he did, but he was injured that week. You know what I'm saying? Is he hurt or is he injured? I mean, if he really wanted to start a job, he would have played through. If it's not that bad of an injury,
I mean, who knows? We're not in his body, but
no,
his body of work so far, what we have seen is better than Carson's. It's just a much smaller,
higher average. Size. Yeah, it's a small sample size, higher average. Rush per carry. Definitely using the pass game just as much as Carson was when he was involved. So I'd like to see a timeshare. I'm not an owner of either way, but I think Penny's earned that right to see at least a 40% timeshare to see what he's got.
This definitely has to make you uncomfortable as a Chris
Not to
Carson
mention,
owner.
if you're Seattle, why did you waste a pick on drafting Penny if you're never going to use him? Trade Carson or trade Penny. Simple as that.
Yeah, we've been talking about this all year. Looks like we might have finally turned the corner a little bit, but we'll see. Based on what Carroll said and how he said it, like I said, definitely not a ringing. We'll do what we can for the guy.
That doesn't sound like he's a believer anymore.
Right. Moving on. Andy Dalton to be reintroduced as the starter for the Bengals in Week 13, and that can only be a good thing. Ryan Finley was just not the guy.
He didn't come out to fight.
He looked terrible. He's looked terrible since he's been out there. He is really right up there with Mason Rudolph as far as just not good. Not good. And speaking of Mason Rudolph, we'll tie that in. He did get benched, and it looks like he will be benched moving forward. And Calvin and Hobbs, or whatever the guy's name is what, Delvin Hodges? Is that what it is? Craig Hodges?
Now you get me all messed up. I believe it's Delvin Hodges. It's
actually, they call him like Duck Hodges. So it sounds like he could be Sheriff Driscoll's deputy. I'm just saying. Duck Hodges.
Hodges and Driscoll.
So we'll workshop that one. But no big deal there. Nobody really cares about Ryan Finley or Mason Rudolph necessarily, but it could, I think at least in Cincinnati, I think Dalton could bring Tyler Boyd back to more relevance and hopefully help that offense a little bit more, because he is definitely better than Ryan Finley, as bad as Andy Dalton can be.
Oh, Finley has destroyed this fantasy value on this team, so.
Well, he gone.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Golden Tate placed in the league's concussion protocol. I don't know what is in the water in New York, but those guys seem to get concussed left and right. If Tate cannot clear the protocol, the guy that was previously concussed, Sterling Shepard, will play in the slot. If so, I think Shepard's a pretty solid start week to week if he's out there, and Tate is not. Next up, Kalen Ballage will remain the starting running back in Miami, which pretty much cements the fact that they're tanking. The guy gets less than 2 yards a carry every week, John. Why would he remain the starter? It makes no sense to me, other than the fact that they're just doubling down on tanking.
They want the best pick?
Yeah.
But right now it's Cincinnati with the best pick anyway.
In the last bit of news here, we're going to Dallas, John, and Jerry Jones considers last night's loss a, quote, significant setback and calls Belichick's team, quote, masterful. About the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry said that they needed a win against an opponent like this, and we haven't had one, quote. Then goes on to say, with the makeup of this team, I shouldn't be this frustrated. He further stated, I don't care if it's New England with their record and their coach and all that. You can't be satisfied just because you got within the last drive. I'm just really frustrated. I thought we would come up here and put together a better effort in all three phases. I expected us to play well against them defensively. We got what I think we should have expected from our defense. The other phases of the game, we can't come up here and play like that. And he's absolutely right. Rod Marinelli should be, I mean, why is he not being talked about in a head coaching role as a somebody that could be considered a head coach in the making, I guess, or at least interviewed for head coaching roles, because Rod Marinelli has gotten this defense, which was for years a laughing stock. I mean, you could run up the scoreboard on the Dallas defense for the better part of the last 10 years, and Marinelli has turned them into a damn good defense. I mean, they just shut down Tom Brady, which isn't as hard these days as it used to be, but in Brady's house, in Brady's weather, in Brady's conditions, they did a great job. But because Jason Garrett is such a bad coach, the offense is just so boring, John. So if Garrett were to get fired, and for the record, I don't think it's happening this year, but if he were to get fired, I really feel like the offense only gets better. I mean, you're going for a field goal on 4th down when if they would have stopped you, you would have put Brady way back. It just doesn't make sense. None of the play calls make sense by this team. And it all is Jason Garrett. I don't care if Kellen Winslow is the offensive coordinator. When the game gets tight and toward the end of the game, Garrett takes over and he completely fumbles everything. He's got to go. And if he does, this team's going to be lethal. Very lethal. Depending on the coach that they get in there, maybe they just throw Kellen Winslow in there like they did with Jason Garrett and they're right
Kellen
back at
Moore,
square.
right?
Or Kellen Moore, sorry. They could probably have Kellen Winslow in there. But anyway, what do you think about Garrett?
I think Garrett needs to go.
Do you think it's finally happening at the end of the year? I guess is my big question.
And
if it does, what does it do to this offense?
I want it to happen. The question is, does it? It should happen.
Was Kellen Winslow the drunk tight end for
New York
Cleveland?
Jets for Cleveland? He's been here, there.
Yeah, so they probably would be better off with Kellen Winslow.
I think Dallas needs to change. To me, Garrett's had his chance. They've always fallen short. More when he controls the offense, they're so much better. Just some of the stuff just doesn't make sense. I watched a game last night. It's actually one of the games I actually got to watch. Cowboys look good, but then you just saw in some play calling, you're just thinking, what are they doing?
They look terrible offensively, except Ezekiel Elliott. During the beginning of that game, John, Ezekiel Elliott was moving through that.
Yeah,
that
so it's here's a perfect example. 3 straight first downs, let's use, they got. And then the next drive, instead of using Elliott, they threw on the first down, which is stupid. Another one, and then second down, they run them. Why not run, then pass, or run, play action? And the whole point of the run is to set up the play action, which they didn't do quite a bit.
Not only that, John, but so I could see, we don't want to just run Zeke and kill him. You got Tony Pollard, who's really good too.
Pollard looked really good. There was also a kickoff return. It wasn't Pollard, it was the other guy. It just went through him, and he almost cost him a fumble. Luckily, Pollard got it, but it's just like, you're the head coach. This stuff should not be happening under your belt, and Garrett assumes it doesn't matter if there's a special teams coach or not. You control the special teams coach.
He's the guy.
He's the head coach. He controls everything.
Yeah.
So, I get the weather, but
come on.
The weather didn't tie into this. Garrett's just coaching bad.
There were a couple of really bad calls. You know what? That's an excuse too. Yeah, that's baked in when you play the Patriots. You are going to see 3 big calls going there.
I don't think there's anything here to defend the Cowboys. They're 6-5. This was a big loss. Yes, they're still first in their division. That means nothing. But if they're going to compete at a higher level, they need to. Their defense is. This is without Van Der Esch. They actually held this Patriots team to a 13-9 game.
They did a great job defensively. My thing is right here, John, to be perfectly honest with you, Garrett has been in playoff games with this team, but I firmly believe that this game was the biggest game of his career as a head coach. That game yesterday was the biggest game of his career, because if he would have won that game, John, he would have bought 5 more years there, I bet.
Oh, easily.
But he lost it, and the way he lost it, because and what did I tell you last week? You said, the Cowboys are going to win.
I was close.
And what did I... No, you weren't close. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is it's the master versus a complete jackass. And the complete jackass lost the game, and that guy is Jason Garrett. Jackass Garrett is his new name, and hopefully he gets fired. I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to say that, but we're not even monetized yet. Anyway, so I'll say what I want. Jason Garrett's a jackass.
Okay, move on.
Good news is, John, we are on the cusp of breaking the top 100 for fantasy sports podcasts, and we need the help of the Armchair Army. We need you guys to advocate for us, share our content on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Talk us up to your friends and network. If we can If we can crack the top 100, one listener will get a free Armchair Fantasy Football t-shirt. All you have to do is leave a review on Apple Podcast and subscribe. The other way to be eligible is to subscribe on YouTube and leave a comment. As we get bigger milestones, we'll give out bigger prizes, John. Let's start a revolution and show these other podcasts that are backed by big networks or podcasts that have all the resources in the world, what the Working Class podcast is all about. Now's the time to kick it into high gear and get this thing to the next level. We need you guys to get us into the top 100, and you can get some free swag while you're at it. All right, ready to get into week 12, dude. Can you believe already week 12?
Last week of regular.
One more week of the regular fantasy
Unless you're
season.
in a weird league.
Unless you play your championship in week 17, which is dumb. So
Some people do, though. I'm just saying.
it's dumb.
This is the last week for most fantasy, and then you start playoffs. So you want me to start with the first game?
I'm going to kick it off here with the Indianapolis Colts against, at home, the Houston Texans. Houston snuck one out 20-17, but when you watch the game, it felt like it was a much bigger gap than that. Deshaun Watson put together a solid game, 298 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. And DeAndre Hopkins made you feel good to own him. It was a warm feeling to own DeAndre Hopkins this week with his 6 catches, 94 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Will Fuller returns in resounding fashion, 7 catches for 140 yards. Not much to speak of from the run game, but the triple threat there in Houston, Will Fuller, DeAndre Hopkins, and Deshaun Watson all came to play, John.
Hopkins'
great.
Mom's was in attendance. I don't know if you know any story behind this.
So go ahead. I'll let you.
She is actually blind. I mean, she wasn't born this way.
So is she a referee? Does she ref any NFL game?
But no, he ended up. He plays. The thing is, when she's around,
Sorry to interrupt, but was she the one that called those 2 tripping penalties last night? Was it DeAndre Hopkins'
It
mom?
could have been.
Right.
But no, she was in attendance. He just plays better when she's in attendance because he usually dedicates the game to her, and you can clearly see Hopkins had a huge day here.
Yeah, he was awesome.
This is the DeAndre Hopkins we like to see week in and week out. Even with Fuller getting most of the attention, Hopkins still went off.
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins still had 8 targets. Will Fuller did have 11 targets. Deshaun Watson just has such good chemistry with both these guys, and it was nice to see it really come through. All 3 of them had big games despite only 20 points for the team. But, other than those 3 guys, there was not much happening, John.
No, it's just that was their show.
Yeah, and it was great to watch, and that was the start of my week in Dynasty, my road to 199, I guess. Over on the Indy side of the ball, Jacoby Brissett, man, I've not ever really been a big fan of this guy, and he's starting to show why lately. 129 yards passing, and he had 20 yards on the ground, but he had a rushing touchdown. So it's like the touchdowns keep this guy afloat every week.
But this is probably his worst game. He had 12 points total. Right. That's nothing to go bragging about. But Houston, this is what I'm surprised about. Houston is solid up front. Like their front line, it's not the easiest team to run against. And
there's been some chinks in the armor lately, but
come on, Houston's one of the worst secondaries, and yet Brissett couldn't get it going here.
Yeah.
But you know who is non-existent?
T.Y. Hilton was, and I don't know how much of it was due to coming off the injury, but dude, he got the targets. He was targeted 6 times, only caught 3 of them for 18 yards, and he dropped a big one. That was pretty well defended too, but it just wasn't a good game for T.Y. Hilton. Honestly, John, it wasn't really a good game for anybody outside of Jonathan Williams, as we mentioned before. 26 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. I don't know if you can start him next week against Tennessee, but it looks like if he's getting 26 carries, bro,
that's like 70%.
That's a stud number. That's a stud workload. Other than
he's actually getting more carries than Marlon Mack was.
I mean, yeah, true. And he's pretty one-dimensional like Marlon Mack. He's not going to catch a ton of passes. He did catch 3 in this one for 17 yards.
He's not
usually his MO.
No, though. He's more just a ground and pound guy. He's not your 3-down back, really. I mean, he can catch, but he's more that grunt, you know? Kind of like a Marlon Mack in a way.
But he carried this team almost to a victory. I mean, it was a close game, but just the offense just did not look good, John. They only tossed the ball 25 times, too, so none of their receivers really showed out. Neither did either of the tight ends. I don't know if you think they can turn around next week against Tennessee, but they didn't look good this week.
I don't know. We'll speak about that Tennessee game because they look good. They look really good.
They did look pretty good. But
on defense, they look good.
Before then, we're going to move on to a game that made me really sad, John.
Oh, the Bucks and Vokage.
I don't know So I guess we owe Parvin an apology because it really does look like Matt Ryan sucks. He's really struggling as of late. And for a guy that was a number 2 quarterback in fantasy last year behind only Pat Mahomes, he has had some struggles as of late. This one was the most surprising. When we give advice, guys, we just look at reality, history. We look at the truth. We look at what has actually happened, and we use that to predict what's going to happen. And what's real is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary is the worst in the league. What's real is that Atlanta was playing at home. What's real is that Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones are receivers on this team. And none of that really mattered in this one. Matt Ryan, bro, 23 for 46. So the attempts were really high. He threw for 271 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Just a really bad game. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. The most carries they dished out was Brian Hill with 14 yards, 1.6 yards per carry. Because as I told all of you, he's terrible. He's not even rosterable. And I said that when everybody was running to the waiver wire to get him. And he was outperformed by Quadri Olison, who had 8 carries for 20 yards at a whopping 2.5 yards per carry, whose day was saved with a touchdown. Like I said, John, they could really use Devonta Freeman because this running attack is just awful. Well, I think it's affecting the whole offense.
Not to mention Olison and Hill, even if they don't have a ground game going, like for much, Devonta Freeman just adds like almost like a James White-esque kind of receiving back.
And of course they're missing Hooper too.
Yeah, Hooper.
And that doesn't help.
But still, you get these weapons. I mean, Ridley and Jones should take a lot of pressure off the other receivers. Gage did step up. He had 8 catches for 76 yards on 10 targets, so that's something you wanted to see from Gage. He actually
Russell engaged in this one because and we started him in the tag team league.
But I mean, Julio's seeing the targets. Ridley 14 targets, 6 catches, 85 yards of TD.
Julio had 9 targets.
Yeah, but he's still missing those TD. That's the one thing that always concerned me. I love Julio. Love Julio. One of my favorite players. But yet his touchdown numbers are always anemic.
I have to watch the tape on this one because when I watch the games, I watch them mostly red zone, John, and you really can't get enough of all the games to really break it down. My guess was Julio was getting double teamed.
Oh, of course.
And Matt Ryan really struggles to get him the ball when that happens. So for him to get 5 for 68 was probably about what you were going to get in a game script like this, where they were probably trying to take him out of the picture. Calvin Ridley, 6 for 85 and a touchdown. Really good game, but most of it was in garbage time, and the touchdown was from Matt Schaub. And then, of course, Russell Gage, 8 for 76. When Russell Gage is having a big game, John, that speaks to a lot of checkdowns and you know, Matt Ryan lacking confidence.
Yeah,
I think that's what that Russell Gage game.
I think keep your eyes open for the offseason because I think Turd Cutter's gone. He destroyed Tampa's offense. Now he's destroying Atlanta's offense. If they keep him, I'd be very surprised. This team used to.
I think Dan Quinn might be gone too. I think they might hit the reset button altogether.
Yeah, I think Arthur Blank will just write out a blank check for somebody.
You know he's not afraid to do that.
No, he'll fire you on the spot. He don't care. And I think they've already talked once before earlier this year about Quinn possibly keeping the job.
Yeah,
this could have just solidified because this last loss
again, John. They're disappointing again. 3-8. With this team,
they're not even play, they just no chance of the playoff now. They could have probably snuck in with 9-7. Yeah, I know 6 straight wins is unheard of, but
possible.
It's possible,
especially with a team with this level of offensive talent. At least.
But
anyway, we'll move on from them. Just a really disappointing game. I honestly don't know what to think of this Falcons team right now. And as a Julio Jones owner, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little concerned. I don't know. Are you a Julio owner in any of the leagues?
No.
All right. Well, next week they have New Orleans, John, which doesn't have a great secondary, so hopefully they'll come back to form. But I'm a little nervous about that. Now let's move on to more positive things, John.
Oh, I love this side.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers side of the ball. Not so positive with Mike Evans, only 4 catches for 50 yards. But man, I had Chris Godwin in Dynasty as well as our tag team league. And boy, did he ball out, man.
So, like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch football yesterday, but I did check my team scores, and all I was saying to inside my head, because remember, I'm at work, I can't scream this. I was like, Chris, I love you, Godwin, because when I saw what he put up for a stat line,
Dude,
8 targets, 7 receptions, 184 yards, and 2 TDs.
I just got 2 words for you. He good.
He really good. So thank you, Mike Evans, for taking the pressure off of him and letting Godwin get open. He had a great day. Evans, low floor game, 8 targets, 4 catches, 50 yards.
You know who else had a good day, John? And I wish that Bruce Arians would start to notice. Ronald Jones is doing everything he can to earn a full-on starting role.
That one
but they're still splitting carries.
But I think it's because that one fumble. That one fumble he's holding against him. So Jones had 12.
Did you see the touchdown?
No, I did not.
He just was like, I'm a man. And I'm getting this touchdown.
So Ronald Jones had 12 carries for 51 yards in OTD. He also had 3 catches for 16 yards. Nothing great, but he actually had a decent day.
He's getting passing work, which is good too. But then you look at Peyton Barber.
That's
11
the problem.
Carries for 32. What are we doing here?
The only thing I can think is that in the fumble last week, I think he just has trust issues.
You know what I think? You know what the only thing I can think is Bruce Arians is a stubborn old fool. That's what I think here. And Ronald Jones put these guys in a position to win a lot more than Peyton Barber does. And they did win the game, and they trounced Atlanta, but I just don't understand it. And frankly, I believe that Dare, the boogeyman, deserves more of a role than Peyton Barber does. But I don't know.
Yeah, you mean his 1 carry for 12 yards?
These old school coaches, though, are just so stubborn and stuck in their ways, and that's why Bruce Arians will never win a Super Bowl.
O.J. Howard is still non-existent. 1 catch for 10 yards.
Cuttable. Cameron Brate, did he play?
Yeah, he had 1 target for 0 yards. So
dude.
Maybe he's in the doghouse now.
That was bad. So really, it was the Chris Godwin show, and of course, Ronald Jones had a solid game, and Jameis Winston, let's not forget him. He did throw 2 interceptions, but threw for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, John, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I saw an interesting stat today that says he's got a chance to lead the league in touchdowns and interceptions.
Yes, isn't that weird?
No, because it's Jameis, but anyway.
He's got 22 touchdowns and 20 interceptions, guys.
That's hilarious. Because only Jameis Winston
But he is averaging 308.3 yards a game.
Yeah.
308.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's all I got to say.
So moving on to the Denver Broncos, who lost 20-3 to the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. John, I was kind of fading Josh Allen in this one a little bit, but the dude had a decent game from a fantasy standpoint. Only 185 yards passing, but he had 2 passing touchdowns. Did have 1 interception, but he also, John, added 56 yards on the ground on 9 carries. He looked like a poor man's Lamar Jackson out there.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect Allen to do this well. Okay, Denver offensively is horrible. We know that.
But their secondary is lethal.
Their front sevens aren't even horrible either. They're actually, I want to say, a top 10 defense still. What usually costs them a game or, the loss is the problem is that the defense out there so long, they're getting tired that they're letting up points because the offense is doing nothing. And we'll talk more about the Denver offense, but yeah. I mean, Allen to do this against Denver is quite shocking because Denver's been a respectable defense so far this year.
You know what was great to see is 21 carries, John, for Devin Singletary, 106 yards, 5 yards a carry. What wasn't great was Frank Gore still got 15 carries, but he got 65 yards out of it at 4.3 yards a clip. So he had a decent game. And he was very close to getting a touchdown. Yeah, but they called it back. Well, they didn't call it back.
The only thing that did happen for Frank Gore, this man will not go away. He just became 3rd on the all-time rushing list, passing Barry Sanders.
So I heard on another podcast, and I won't mention their name, but it was a thought-provoking question: is Frank Gore a Hall of Famer?
Yes,
I guess so.
Look what he did in his earlier years.
I guess if TD's in there, then you got to put Gore in there. But TD did a lot in a short time frame.
Yes.
Gore's done a lot in in
a long frame.
He's been in the league for 45 years.
But you also got to remember those Frank Gore games where Frank Gore had 24 carries.
He was a great fantasy guy.
Oh, God. He used to kill people.
But that doesn't make you a Hall of Famer. But anyway, just a thought. It's an interesting, thought-provoking question. Cole Beasley is always very thought-provoking in terms of when do I start him? And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. This week was a week you could, with 6 catches for 76 yards and a touch. But you never really know with this guy.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, not a huge game for anybody necessarily outside of those guys. And then I don't think Brandon Allen ate yesterday. You know why, John? Because the Buffalo Bills defense stole his lunch. 10 for 25, 82 yards, and an interception. That's about as bad a stat line as
82 yards. Lindsey had almost more total yards than he did.
It was bad.
No, I'm being serious, guys.
And then there was even talk, and I didn't put it in the news because he's probably going to suck too, but there was Drew Lock talk coming out of Denver after this one, and I don't blame him. Dude, you're going to get me on this rant again, and you haven't even said anything, but see your face right now. The backup running backs in this league that have taken over for starters are ruining fantasy football this year. Because Joe Flacco, wasn't that bad, man. And Brandon Allen is that bad. Phillip Lindsay, 13 carries, 57 yards. Didn't look bad. I was watching the game, and Lindsay looked good. But Royce Freeman's irrelevant. 2 carries for 20 yards, which is great. He had a long of 13, so it wasn't just one big play. It was, a 7-yard run and a 13-yard run, but 2 carries ain't going to do it. He's a handcuff at this point, right? And then looking at the receivers, dude, Cortland Sutton, 1 for 27.
Which we figured he'd be on lockdown.
We thought it would be bad, but and you're grateful for the 27 because thank God it was actually a big play. And then, of course, Noah Fant 3 for. There's really nothing to speak of here, John, in terms of fantasy.
Phillip Lindsay.
This is a tough Buffalo defense and a bad quarterback.
Phillip Lindsay had 68 total yards.
Yeah.
Brandon Allen 82.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's bad. This
is what happens when a good defense goes against a trash quarterback in their house.
Yeah, I say start Drew Lock at this point. You have nothing to lose. Your team, your offense is already anemic, and at this point, they're not going anywhere. Let's be honest. They have no chance for the playoffs. They're 3-8. They're done too.
Yeah.
So I say, why not test things? Why not give everybody a chance to play there, and let's see what they got.
Let's move on to the next one. The New York Giants lost to the Chicago Bears in Chicago. We'll start with Mitchell Trubisky, who I guess had a pretty good fantasy stat line. He did have 7 carries for 18 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He threw for 278 yards and a touchdown through the air. Also threw his obligatory 2 interceptions. Not a terrible game for Trubisky, but this is one of the worst defenses in the league. So, he should have a good game. But he did get Allen Robinson back to form. Jalen Ramsey was nowhere to be found this week, John. So Allen Robinson was able to put up 6 catches for 131 yards and a touchdown. A huge game there. Anthony Miller, John, does it again. 6 catches for 77 yards. So he's looking more consistent. But again, really easy matchup. So it's hard to really gauge that. And then Tariq Cohen had 7 catches for 29 yards and 6 carries for 25 yards. So he had a decent garbage day for you. It was the garbage man rolled into town for Tariq Cohen. But David Montgomery, bro, 13 carries for 22 yards. Not good, and he hasn't been good for a while. I'm getting nervous about David Montgomery. And frankly, you look at Miles Sanders, you look at David Montgomery, the rookie running back class this year is looking a little rough. But as far as David Montgomery is concerned, against the Giants, 13 for 22, are you concerned?
Yes.
Please elaborate.
Cohen's still there. Cohen's not being used like a third down back. Cohen's being used as a committee back. That concerns me. Montgomery usage was going up. Now it's trending back down.
Yeah.
I think they think, or maybe the Bears, I don't know what their thought process is here, but I think they feel like they have to use Cohen because, to me, he's part of their offense. They can't drive downfield without him, it looks like.
Well, I think what's happening, John, is teams are focusing on Trubisky and focusing on Montgomery, and they're daring Chicago to make Trubisky beat them, which happened this week, but it's not likely to happen. So I think teams are game planning specifically against Montgomery, and they're happy to give up the 6 catches for 131 yards to Allen Robinson, but they're probably still going to win the game. Unfortunately, it was the Giants this week, and they can't seem to win anything. But I'm very nervous about David Montgomery, despite the matchups, because I think teams are just keying in on him. This was a great matchup, and it didn't happen.
But not to mention, Chicago doesn't have no use of its tight end, which is not right for this coach. You know that Nagy.
Yeah.
He always uses a tight end. And what's his name? Trey Burton's been
He's been hurt.
He's been hurt, and I mean, you can't use your tight end. That's a major loss for the offense. I mean, honestly, they have done nothing with their tight end.
They didn't even target a tight end.
Thank you.
Knowledge.
So if you don't target a tight end, how do you expect to get? And,
Yeah.
I mean, most teams use.
But they won.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good. But anyway, we'll move on to New York. This is probably Eli's last year in New York, right?
Yes, he becomes a free agent after this year.
But even so, they'll probably cut him, I would think. Why don't they just put him back in there, dude? Because Daniel Jones, I mean, the good thing about Daniel Jones is he got 2 touchdowns in this one, but he only threw for 150 yards, and he's got a little bit of the Konami code. He can run and had 27 yards rushing here on 2 carries. But the problem here, I think the bigger issue is there's specifically for Saquon Barkley. There's a lot to unpack for Saquon Barkley. Number one, it's a bad offensive line.
Oh, even the upgrades they did a year ago are still not good enough.
They're not upgrades.
This team needs to draft a lineman, kind of like the Colts did with Quentin Nelson, and just take it.
I think it's bigger than that, John. I think they need to do what Jerry Jones did and just keep drafting linemen in the first round. I mean, if you believe in Daniel Jones as the future,
then you want to protect him.
I'm not so sure they do at this point, but you got to protect him.
But,
and not only that, but you got to protect Barkley too.
Yes, but if that team does this, let's say they just go lineman first round, second round, they could actually rebuild this team and be a better fantasy team. And you can't sit there and say Daniel Jones stinks or Barkley stinks.
So what did they get for Beckham? They got a first rounder, as far as I understand it, as far as I can remember.
So I think they have 2 first rounders next year.
And they might even have more than that. Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line.
I'm curious to see what they
their
have.
defense stinks too, but at least you got to give your quarterback a chance, number one. Number two, so that's number one. Their offensive line is trash. Number two, the offense is trash. But I think that's in large part to the offensive line. So that's number 2 problem for Barkley. Number 3 problem is I think the ankle's still bothering him. I can't imagine it's not, because we know what Barkley is capable of, and I think you would agree it's not 3.5 yards per carry. I think you would agree it's not a guy that has one big play in the game and that's it. Barkley is so electric as a talent. He's so good as a pass catcher. He had 2 catches for 1 yard, John, on 3 targets. This is not the Barkley we saw last year. So I think it's the offensive line, the offense in general, and I think he's still banged up. For me, and I am an owner in Barkley, for me, I don't understand why the Giants, who have Wayne Gallman, wouldn't just shut him down. You think they will?
No. That's probably Barkley, I bet you. It's not the owner.
It could be.
I think Barkley wants to play.
But if I'm the owner, Barkley's the centerpiece of my offense. I'm going, and that's why I'd probably be a bad owner because I'd be meddlesome, but I'm going to the head coach Shermer and saying, look, dude, it might be a bad idea. We're 2-9, probably not getting anywhere this year. Why don't we just sit Barkley for the rest of the season and throw Gallman in there, which I'm fine with because I own Gallman too, just from a personal standpoint. But anyway, are you concerned with Barkley the rest of the year, or do you think he'll turn it around?
I'm concerned. I don't think he's playing 100%. I think he has the love for the game that he doesn't want to give it up or shut it down. But the issue lies deeper here. The numbers are affecting the whole team. You get Ingram out, or Ingram not 100%. The receivers can only step up so much. Barkley can only step much. To me, they need linemen. The good thing is next year for 2020, Giants are number 12 for salary cap space. So I suggest they use that $63 million they'll have and a half, or right around there, in cap space to go shopping. I would get Trent Williams does not want to become a Redskin anymore. He does not want to.
And he almost went to New York.
Yep. So
it was very close.
Let's say they get him with the New York Giants, and you draft a first rounder.
I think they have at least 2 first rounders.
No, I checked. They have 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's strange.
So, to me, if you're the Giants, you invest a first round pick, you invest a free agency signing, because think about it, their receivers are young and talented. They're not bad,
and they may have a couple of seconds. But anyway, I don't want to belabor the point on New York. We all know that they're a hot mess right now. I am going to double down on Darius Slayton, though. I like this kid a lot. I think he's a superstar in the making, and he had a solid game. He had 4 catches for 67 yards, on 7 targets, which I think is the more important number. His target numbers seem to be more consistently rising. Golden Tate, 3 for 33 and a touchdown on 7 targets. Caden Soroyce, 5 for... Oh, no, Caden Smith. Sorry. It's not
That's
your
my
son. Caden Smith had 5 catches for 17 yards and a touchdown as well. That helps no one. Nobody started Caden Smith. Right? Am I right?
All I'm thinking is my son's name now. After you said that.
You could probably start Caden Soroyce next week and get more points than Caden Smith. But who is this guy? Should we be looking at him on the waiver wire?
No,
John?
I don't think so. I think it's a 1-week wonder.
Okay.
You can try, but that's not on week 13 if you're trying to make the playoffs.
No, it's kind of a big week.
Very, very risky. If you're playing based on the fact that, okay, let's say someone like me, we are such in a tie in our league of record that I could take that chance because it may solidify me the points I need to dig underneath. But I'm based on the fact that I'm not making the playoffs. So I can sit there and make that crazy move. Someone that's fighting for like a roto championship, no, don't do it. Don't be stupid. You're fine. I won't do it in my dynasty or tag. No way. Just in my league of record, I might take that chance this week.
All right. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. I actually picked the Bengals to win this game. It's just, you watch this team. They're not even running at full speed, John. They are in full tank mode. And they've got the upper hand on any other team in the league because they're 0-11. Obviously, Dalton's going back in there. I think they have to at least make it look like they're trying. And with Ryan Finley out there, they don't look like they're trying. He had 192 yards and did have a touchdown thrown to Tyler Boyd, who came back. He's back, John. Tyler Boyd had 5 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. I'm watching this game with my son, Andrew, and I said, imagine that. If you involve your best players,
they do
you
better.
Score touchdowns.
Yes.
And you have a chance to win. Not a great game for Joe Mixon.
It's because he wasn't used in the passing game.
I was going to say that before you interrupted me, and I think we're working on interruptions, right? Are we working on that?
Yes, I'm just irritated because I have Mixon.
So Joe Mixon, 18 carries for 79 yards. But as John Michael Thomas to me right there, he jumped in and mentioned that he did not get used at all in the passing game. They're just giving up. And it's unfortunate because there are some guys that should be fantasy relevant on this team, and they're just not. Maybe Dalton helps that, but even with that being said, for me, it's Mixon and Boyd are really the only 2 guys I'm trusting at all, and I don't really trust those guys at all. I don't know about you. If you,
it's hard to. This team, they need to fire Zach Taylor. He's awful. I get he was a new coach, but he has done an awful job. You got to at least try to win a game, man, to keep your job. And I don't.
Don't you think he was a bridge coach all along? Though?
Yes.
Like they're like, I guess we'll. You know what? You know what Zach Taylor is? Remember when we used to play like kickball and you would pick your teammates?
Yeah,
the schoolyard.
He's the last.
He was the last pick. He was the last pick on the schoolyard, and it's showing. And I think they're just trying to get that first overall pick to get this kid out of LSU, which it looks like they got a pretty good chance at. So we'll see next year. For this year, they just got beat by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mason Rudolph is trash, as I have told you guys over and over and over again. And finally, Mike Tomlin realized it and benched him. He had 85 yards and an interception before he got benched for Duck Hodges. Good old Duck Hodges. He got 118 yards and a touchdown in the short time frame that he was in there. So he actually looked pretty good. I wouldn't expect much out of him moving forward. I wouldn't go running to the waiver wire for him. Benny Snell, John. So this was really strange to me. Because Jalen Samuels has been the guy. Like, he is the only guy on the offense that they actually use. And it completely shifted to a now healthy Benny Snell, John. 21 carries for 98 yards. An excellent game there. He even caught a pass for 5 yards. Benny Snell is somebody you want to look at the waiver wire to possibly snag. We don't know if Connor's healthy. We don't know if he's going to be healthy. I could see the Connor situation as all of a sudden he's on IR and he's shut down for the year.
It'd be the smartest thing to do.
Because they're 6-5 though, so that's the only thing that gives me pause on that. But I think Benny Snell is worthy of a waiver claim. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I remember I mentioned Benny Snell last week, and I said, because remember, everybody's touting Jalen Samuels, I said.
Yep.
and I said, he's not a great runner. He's a good pass catcher. Snell Jr., now that you get the opportunity, he is the better. He's a ground and pound.
Yep, definitely.
He's not he won't catch you a million passes. He's a ground and pound back, but as you can see, about 4.5 yards a carry? Does that sound about right?
Had a good game. To be specific, he had 4.7 yards per carry, but yeah, a good game. The other guy I think that is waiver wire worthy here, John, is James Washington, because I think he's starting to separate himself from Johnson as the number 2, or in this game, number 1 receiver. He had 3 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown, but led the team in targets with 7 targets. So
he's someone we talked at the beginning of the year that he was an unseat Moncrief.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's had the quarterback changes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Roethlisberger out.
Yeah. I think that he will definitely have a bigger jump next year.
I would definitely look at him on the waiver wire if he's out there. I imagine some leagues he's picked up, but he's probably available in a fair amount of leagues, especially in like 10-team leagues, and you could pick up worse guys. So moving on, this was a feel-good game, John, because I called it, man. I said you could pretty much start everybody in Cleveland, and that's what happened. Cleveland beat Miami 41-24. I said start Baker Mayfield. He had 327 yards and 3 touchdowns. Did have 1 pick. I said start Nick Chubb. He had 21 carries for 106 yards. I said start Kareem Hunt. Not as good, but he did have a touchdown. And Nick Chubb got a touchdown as well. Kareem Hunt, 8 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown, 2 catches for 9 yards. So he had a good day from a fantasy standpoint. I said start Jarvis Landry, 10 catches for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. Won you a week, didn't he?
Oh, wait a minute. This is the first time I started a quarterback that got me over 30. No joke. I started Baker this week.
Yeah, I told you to.
Yeah, I started Baker this week. He did fantastic. And then Landry, thank you for making it rain, because I love stacking a quarterback and receiver.
Too. Hashtag revenge game. I also told you to start Odell Beckham Jr. at 6 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. And Nick Chubb, I'm sorry, you also had 3 catches for 58
this
yards.
is a better game.
What's that?
Usually Chubb doesn't see this kind of targets.
No,
this
not
is
with
great.
Hunt, especially not with Hunt out there. It was wheels up for the Cleveland Browns, as I predicted. I told you guys to fire everything on the Cleveland side of the ball, and if you did it, it paid off for you, because the Miami Dolphins are just that bad. You know who's not that bad in fantasy? Ryan Fitzpatrick, dude. I mean, he's kind of bad in real life, but 214 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the sneaky thing about Fitzpatrick, John, is that he's got the Konami code, and nobody ever really has given him credit for that, but he's always been good on the run. He had 5 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown there. Fitzpatrick was a week winner if you started him, probably in
30 points. Well, probably 20.
But I'm talking specifically in DFS.
Yeah, 26 points. I mean, just from a guy who must cost like $5,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Little disappointed in the Patrick Laird. Again, though, John, 3 carries for 20 yards, 6.7 yards a carry. Kalen Ballage, 7 carries for 13 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. And that's why I sit here and tell you this is further proof that they're just tanking. To leave Kalen Ballage as the lead back, and maybe it's a smokescreen, and they don't want other teams to think that they're going to use Laird more.
Well, the only thing I can think of, they had team meeting and said, Laird did too good the week before, we're not giving him usage.
Yeah, we can't.
Because he was not just touted in fantasy. Everybody saw what we saw.
He's better.
DFS, so many people played him.
I bet.
Because he was dirt cheap. He had a great week last week. He had a high usage.
And that and a dime didn't buy him a cup of
Nope,
coffee.
people lost their weeks because of him.
You know who's been winning people weeks is anybody that starts Devontae Parker every week. 6 catches for 91 yards. One of the most consistent wide receivers, John, in the game right now. And Allen Hurns, fresh off a new contract, rewarded the Dolphins with 4 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. And Albert Wilson even made an appearance. 6 catches for 33 yards. Not a huge game, but he at least showed that he's still alive. And Mike Gesicki caught another touchdown on 3 catches for 28 yards.
Hey.
So he's an interesting spot start.
I said Gesicki. Remember I said
But you can't trust him.
No, but I said if you were desperate this week and you needed a tight end fill-in, I said Gesicki as a fill-in.
And this was
10 points.
Largely a fantasy bonanza game.
Oh,
right
it was. It was golden.
Especially on the Cleveland side of the ball. I was picking my spot. I'm like, I know there's going to be a game where everybody in Cleveland is startable. And it was definitely, of course, against the Miami Dolphins. That was definitely the game.
Still have a chance to make the playoffs.
The Dolphins?
No, the Browns.
I was going to say.
No, not Dolphins.
The Browns definitely do have a chance.
Unless,
and they're gaining momentum right now.
Yeah.
And they were having fun out there, and Odell looked like he was having fun.
They've the whole team fines came out for the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I still don't get the fine thing, how Mason Rudolph got technically fined more money than Myles Garrett.
Yeah,
it makes no sense. But they're moving on from the Garrett thing from now.
Mason Rudolph got suspended by God because he's benched now. So
karma.
It all
it's
worked
karma.
out.
Yeah. But apparently, I guess from what I'm reading, Myles Garrett, as long as he just pretty much holds off with this suspension indefinitely,
he'll be back next
He'll
year.
be back next year. It looks like this is not going to be a.
And he doesn't
ending.
have a history. Of
No.
This. Anyway, let's move on. Carolina at New Orleans. New Orleans won 34-31. This was a fantasy bonanza. Drew Brees, 311 yards and 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. So this was that big old game you wanted from Drew Brees, and he came through for you, unlike Aaron Rodgers. Running the ball, Latavius Murray only had 7 carries, but he got 64 yards and a touchdown, so a good game for him. Alvin Kamara was bad for a large part of this game, John. I don't even know if he had a full point at halftime, but he finished with 11 carries for 54 yards, which is still pretty efficient at 4.9 yards a carry. And he caught 9 passes, John. He caught every one of his passes, every one of his targets for 48 yards. So he surprisingly ended up with like 18, 19 points. But it didn't look great. You know who looked great? You know who looks great all the time?
Michael
It's
Thomas.
really annoying because I don't own him in any league. But it's, as John would say, Michael Thomas. 10 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown.
How is he not being touted for MVP?
It's a great question.
How is he not?
That's
He's
a really
doing
good
this
question.
every week.
Because he's a receiver.
Doesn't matter. He's put
Receivers never get the love.
his
though.
totals right now are almost Antonio Brown level, and he got an MVP.
Yeah.
But yet there's no talks of Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
There isn't.
I will tell you what I was wrong about this week, and that was Jared Cook. 6 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
I had a great game. On the other side of the ball, man, Christian McCaffrey, guess what his yards per carry were? On the
3.
ground. 2.9 yards per carry.
I didn't look either.
That's bad. But he got a touchdown. And he got 22 carries.
But
And then in the air, he got 9 catches on 9 targets for 69 yards and a touchdown. This is one of the best run defenses in the league, John, and the guy still gets 30 points.
what did I say last week? McCaffrey has a safe floor of 15.
I'm starting to dislike him.
Because he's so good.
Well, 2.9 yards a carry ain't good.
No, but it's his. Okay, one, he got a touchdown on rushing.
He's like Chris Carson, but talented. So when he gets the Chris Carson
but
workload, it's 30 points
his
every
usage. He literally plays almost
That's
every
ridiculous.
snap. It's 100%
I don't even want to
snap
talk
count.
about him anymore.
And then on top of that, he's so involved in the pass game. He's going to get over 2,000 all-purpose
He's going
yards.
to get hurt.
He still hasn't. He's Superman.
We'll see.
And he leads the league now.
Must be on the Tom Brady avocado steroid
Sweet.
ice cream.
I love McCaffrey, guys, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
McCaffrey
You
also...
don't own him, do you?
Yes, in Dynasty.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. McCaffrey.
Yeah.
But McCaffrey, let's be honest, he now leads the league with 20 total touchdowns. He could end up, honestly,
All right,
with
let's move on.
25.
I told you not to start Curtis Samuel. John told you to start him. You should have listened to me. I told you to start DJ Moore. 6 catches for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. He good. Listen to me, guys. Listen to John too, but listen to me more.
Wow.
When it's a 50-50 split, you gotta go. You gotta go. What is it? The runner wins. The tie goes to the runner. I'm the runner.
I don't know. You just had me confused on what you just said.
Tie goes to the runner. You never heard that before? 5 catches, 44 yards for Olsen. Nothing great there, but yeah, it was really DJ Moore having a huge game. Christian McCaffrey and Kyle Allen, John, 256 yards and 3 touchdowns. When nobody on the planet started him, the whole planet started him last week in a great matchup. So you know what that means, John? Kyle Allen is a horrible human being.
He went off.
All right, next up on the list, John, is the Oakland Raiders, or what's left of them.
I didn't expect this kind of game.
In New York, got dominated by the Jets, if that's even a thing. Apparently it is now. Let's go through Oakland first, because there's really not much to speak of here, John, and nothing positive, that's for sure.
Can I say what you want to say?
Go ahead.
Derek Carr's trash.
He sucks.
He killed us this week.
Well, we won. But it wasn't thanks
we
to
could have
Derek
won
Carr.
big.
Our whole team pretty much went off except for the idiot Derek Carr, the stupid idiot Derek Carr.
And this was a decent matchup other than the ground game, I thought. Jets are not good in the secondary.
Mike Glennon even got in there because Derek Carr was so bad. He had 15 completions on 27 attempts and an interception. So that's not good. And on the ground, he had 2 carries, John, for 4 yards. So that's not good either. He had single-digit points for a quarterback. That is just
awful.
Unacceptable. And obviously that affected everybody around him. Josh Jacobs was really bad in this game. He was only targeted once through the air. He had only 10 carries for 34 yards. I mean, I'm just going to make it short and sweet. Nobody had a good game here. The best game out of all of these players was Jalen Richard with 6 catches for 47 yards, which is why I will double down on Hunter Renfrow being out. I think Richard is the guy that's going to benefit the most from that. And that's really all there is to talk about from the Oakland side. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, this was just a bad game for Oakland. I mean, they should have dominated this game through the air, even without Renfrow. Used Jacobs more. I mean, he was barely used. They used Richard a lot, but here's the thing. They just, I don't even know what happened. You were down 13-0 at halftime, and you just get owned in the third quarter, so you just give up?
I'll ask you one more question. Is Waller mania over?
He's hit a wall.
He definitely has hit a wall.
He's hit a wall. That's my opinion. I think teams have figured him out now, in a way. He still sees a high amount of targets, but they've kind of figured out that we can't leave him open. So I would temper your expectations. Like a 10-point floor is about safe. He had 7 here.
All right, on the Jets side of the ball, Lev Bell had a great game, Johnny. He had 12 carries for 49 yards at 4.1 yards a carry. He looked like the Lev Bell of old in the passing game, 5 catches for 59 yards. No touchdown here, but got you around 15 points in PPR, which is great. And there was a zombie out there. Risen from the dead, Robbie Anderson, 4 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown. Is that going to be a commonplace theme, John, or is that a one-hit wonder? I'm going with one-hit wonder.
I want to go with one-hit wonder, but for some reason, remember last year around this time, Darnold and Robbie Anderson went on a tear. They did connect. Maybe they're getting that vibe back. Maybe it's a winter theme. I don't know. But I don't know. Like we said, when we did start and sits, we weren't high on Anderson. I'm still high on Anderson.
I if I had to rewind time, I would say the same thing. You can't trust him. Ryan Griffin's becoming more trustworthy. Only 3 targets, but he caught all 3 of them, and he caught a touchdown.
Yes, he's been
getting that red zone work.
The touchdown dependency, but still, he still got you 10 points.
Yeah. Outside of that, nothing too drastic. I mean, like I said, Darnold 315 and 2 touchdowns. Great game for him, but really spread it out here in this game, John. So just to clear up for anybody, no, you are not picking up Sam Darnold. No, you are not starting him under any circumstances, because I've seen him have good matchups before and just completely explode, or I should say implode. Don't trust Sam Darnold. That's my public service announcement for the day. Seahawks, John. I went against Russell Wilson, and I was nervous. I wasn't as nervous about Tyler Lockett, who I also went against because coming back from an injury, who knows the usage. But I was nervous about Russell Wilson against the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, which is atrocious. And he didn't really show up for this one. He had they only threw the ball 25 times. He only completed 13 of those for 200 yards, and he did throw for a touchdown. But he also threw for an interception. That touchdown was a 33-yard catch to Malik Turner, who nobody in the world started. Tyler Lockett, who everybody in the world probably started, had 1 catch for 38 yards on 2 targets, so I think the injury was still hampering him. And then DK Metcalf, who dropped 2 really potentially big play balls, one of them being a touchdown, finished the day with 3 catches for 35 yards on 6 targets. So it seems to me, John, and of course, we talked about Chris Carson. He did have 4 catches for 31 yards, 8 carries for 26 yards. So another disappointing output for a Seahawks player. And I think to a large degree, John, Russell Wilson's supporting cast failed him in this game, except for one guy, Rashad Penny, 14 carries for 129 yards, 9.2 yards a carry and a touchdown. But yes, I think Russell Wilson's boys failed.
Which is eye-opening because the Eagles are very good against the run.
They're pretty good against the run.
So
yep,
that might tell you guys,
statement.
Penny, how Penny is talent-wise, guys. He does have the talent. And to roast an Eagles team, I believe that is the last 3 years been in the top 5 for rushing against the run. He just popped off on him.
Yeah.
So I get one of them is 58 yards, but it doesn't matter. He's still, even if you subtract that, he still had 13 carries for 70 yards, still averaging almost 6 yards a carry against this stout run defense. So I'd spend some fab money if he's still available.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, yeah, you have to. Rashad Penny is a must pick up.
Oh, yeah.
A must pick up.
But I doubt he'd be available.
And I'd spend a lot of fab money.
I'd spend it all.
I would go all in at this
Your fantasy playoffs start next week.
Every red penny you have, send in there. Philadelphia side of the ball, Carson Wentz did not have a good game. Threw 2 interceptions, did throw 1 touchdown, 256 yards passing. I kind of poo-pooed Sanders. Wasn't a terrible game. 12 carries for 63 yards, which is pretty efficient. He also added 3 catches for 23 yards on 5 targets. So his receiving work, John, is keeping him relevant. Outside of that, it was Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, 12 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. I told you guys it was coming. The resurgence of Zach Ertz was coming. I told you for a few weeks in a row, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. And it is. Zach Ertz is back. Dallas Goedert, John, didn't have a great game. 7 catches for 32 yards. It got you 10 points in PPR, but got 8 targets again. So I don't know how much of this is due to the injuries.
A lot.
I don't know how much of Wentz, his inability to get the ball down the field is due to the injuries. I'm guessing you're thinking yes, and I probably wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, they had Greg Ward starting here. Anybody know who Greg Ward is other than a backup?
They re-signed Jordan Matthews. I did think J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was going to have a better game, but, I mean, it wasn't terrible. He got 7 points.
I just think that he's too raw is the best word to use, and I think he's been involved. That's why he's still too raw.
But he's very similar in style to Alshon Jeffrey, so I thought it would make sense, but just not a good game.
No, for him, I think it's going to take him another year, probably get to the pace, but this definitely, Dallas getting the targets is all based on the injury. I mean, no Alshon, no Deshaun Jackson's been out forever, you know.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
Ooh.
Oh, wait, that's Lamar. Sorry. Speaking of sorry and guys getting fired, let's move on to the Detroit Lions, John. They went into Washington's house and got beat by Washington 19-16. Sheriff Driscoll only had 207 yards and a touchdown. Also threw 3 interceptions. So like I said, John, you can't trust these backups. Just when people thought Sheriff Driscoll was going to be a good start, I said, no. Avoid. Go away. Run as fast as you can from Sheriff Driscoll. And he went and threw 3 picks for you if you happen to start him.
But he got that little Konami code.
Yeah, well, that didn't do much. So the 3 picks are probably 2 points apiece.
And even out
so
the rushing.
So he made that back with the 9 carries for 63
So he got
yards.
14 points, basically.
The interesting thing on him is he does have the Konami code. He's shown a couple of times now that he can run the ball.
It's eye-opening. You look down, you're like, Sheriff Driscoll, 9 attempts, 63 yards, but then you see the 3 picks. That makes it go away.
But I mentioned getting fired. I really think Matt Patricia is on the hot seat at this
point.
Good,
because he's too deep. To me, he's too defensive-minded. He needs to be more offensive-minded.
And I feel like he's involved in the offense when he shouldn't be because he really has no business being involved.
Who's that sound like?
Help me out here. Oh, Garrett?
Yeah.
Well, they both should get fired. Sorry, you kind of caught me off guard there.
You see his face. He's looking at me like, "Who are you talking about?" But you knew what I was talking about.
And Bo Scarborough was a nice little surprise here. I did not have any faith in him, but he had 18 carries for 98 yards. Problem with Scarborough is he doesn't really get involved in the passing game, so he limits your upside there. But not a bad game for him. If he caught a pass, it would have got him into double digits. Not quite there, but the 18 carries were definitely encouraging, and he did have 1 carry for 30 yards there. Kenny Golladay, 4 for 61, 10 points.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. You know, I think
he didn't see a lot of targets.
I think he didn't. He only had 4 targets, and I think you're expecting less with Sheriff Driscoll out there from Golladay. The guy I'm expecting to get the workload now is Marvitron, man. Marvin Jones had 11 targets, only caught 5 of them for 46 yards. So a little disappointing there, but he is definitely the main target for Sheriff Driscoll. And not so bad for Matt Stafford either. Stafford was really starting to target him a lot down the stretch there. So I don't know who's going to be the quarterback there moving forward. I know Detroit has got to be begging to get Matt Stafford back, but I don't know if he's going to be right for this week. My guess is not yet. What do you think, John, about Stafford's availability?
Stafford said that he will play when he is released from team medical.
Yeah.
From what it sounds like, doesn't sound too inspiring to me. I really am waiting to hear that Stafford will be sent to IR and done for the year.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
It would not surprise me. At this point, they're not even in playoff contention. They basically have to win out to even stand a chance to make the playoffs. I think after this week, you're going to hear that Stafford shut down for the year.
To lose to Washington and Dwayne Haskins, and that puts you at 3-7-1. I mean, it's a lost season at this point.
I think Stafford will be shut down. It's just a matter of time here. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to shut him down. It'd be the smartest thing to do. He doesn't take any chance of making the injury any worse. It gets more time to heal, and they just, basically just pack up, lick their wounds, and draft and try to rebuild the team again for next year.
So, moving on to Dwayne Haskins, 156 yards and an interception.
He's awful.
I'm watching the game, John, and I know he's hurt, isn't he? He's got like an ankle or wrist or
something.
Who,
Haskins?
Yeah. He's banged up in some way, shape, or form, but I don't think that's the issue. He's just, I'm watching the kid, he's just not good. He missed McLovin on a wide open pass. It's like not even a 10-yard pass. McLovin was wide open going across the middle in the end zone, and he completely missed him. It was one of the worst passes I've ever seen. Literally, McLovin was like right there, wide open, and Haskins is like, I don't know if the kid overthinks it out there.
He could be the jitters. It's his first year starting. I just don't think
he's mentally tough enough. I think that's part of it.
Is Alex Smith healthy enough to play?
I don't think so. But Haskins is definitely talented, John. He's got some talent. He's got some gifts. He got 28 yards on the ground, but like when you watch the kid, it's really bad. And again, the quarterback position is killing fantasy football this year.
It's destroying.
And we're going to get to Aaron Rodgers. Some of the studs are killing it too, but man, Dwayne Haskins definitely caps the upside of some of these guys. But McLovin, the aforementioned McLovin, did have 5 catches for 72 yards. And Geis didn't look good either. And Adrian Peterson didn't look good either. Both of those guys, Peterson had 2.7 yards per carry. Geis had 3.2. Geis caught 1 pass for 6 yards. And it was a game script that really, you should have seen the running backs thrive in this type of a game, and they just didn't. And that's concerning for me for Geis, but at least Geis is coming off an injury, getting his sea legs back. Adrian Peterson, it's over. Why are we giving him 10 carries? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Case Keenum made an appearance, by the way. He ran the ball for -1 yards.
What, did he kneel the ball?
Yeah, I think so.
Unbelievable.
So anyway, that was pretty much it for Washington. Par for the course there. Nothing much to see. So we're going to move on, Johnny
Jags
boy.
and Titans?
We're going to move on to the Jags and the Titans, which... Lenny.
Can I say something here?
I just want to say Lenny. But yeah, go ahead.
If I'm the Jaguars, I think you just forfeit the game every time you see Derrick Henry. He owns them. Owns them.
So what happened here, though? So again, my Hulu failed me miserably yesterday, and I was watching the game, and Derrick Henry had 28 points at halftime, and then he finished with 28.5 or something like that.
Yeah, so here's what happened.
So he did nothing in the second half.
No, he had that big 74-yard run.
Yeah.
Then after that was another goal line touchdown, and then he just started pounding the ball consistently.
So I guess John wants to start with Tennessee, so we'll play ball here. Derrick Henry, 19 carries for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. He caught a pass for 16 yards. I think he might double his reception count this year.
Compared to last year,
yeah,
yes.
He's definitely been catching the ball more. And he's been I'm going to say it, John. He's been a stud this year. Ever since you got rid of him, he's been a stud. So really, kind of, it's your fault that he was bad, and you're kind of responsible for the rise of Derrick Henry. So everybody, let's just give John a round of applause.
Yeah, just if I dump players this year,
for bringing Derrick Henry back to relevance. 8.4 yards a carry. But anyway, yeah, Henry was great. Tannehill looked great, dude. Tannehill has definitely earned this starting job. I don't know if he's the long-term
4
answer
touchdowns.
There. Yeah, 4 touchdowns. He had 2 through the air, 259 yards passing, and then he had 7 carries for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns. Is he the long-term guy there, do you think? Or do you think they're going to kind of weigh their options?
He's winning them games. He's keeping them. I still think they're going to roll with him as the more start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As the starter for now. I would say the offseason they may be looking.
And he's performing really well. A.J. Brown had a great game, 4 for 135 and a touchdown.
But is he trustworthy?
Is he trustworthy? And the other guy, Corey Davis, I'm beginning to think it's Corey Davis that's the problem. Because Tannehill had a great game. They scored 42 points, and Corey Davis was just
Do you think he's down just because of all the past? And he's just done?
I don't know, but he's a bust. And he was supposed to be awesome.
Yep.
And we haven't seen it. And A.J. Brown's definitely the head receiver, the lead receiver there. He's the number one in Tennessee. But what does that do for you on a week-to-week basis? A.J. Brown, the number one receiver on Tennessee, got 5 targets. That's the number one receiver. So, I don't know.
Didn't need to throw much in this game, really.
They didn't because Derrick Henry got the bulk of the work, and that's how Tennessee wants to play, John. And it worked this time. On the Jacksonville side of the ball, I mean, the score didn't show it with only 20 points, but there were a lot of fantasy-relevant players in this game, John. Nick Foles had 272 yards. He had 3 carries for 20 yards. Didn't throw a touchdown here. He actually, in our league, he got 20 points. So he mustered his way to 20 points, but no touchdown there is a little concerning. There has been talk. Is Minshew going to come back? The coach, Doug Moron, said, nope, we're sticking with Foles. But if Foles has another crap week, you got to kind of consider that $8 million investment or whatever it is, $80 million, whatever the heck he made. I don't know.
I can tell you, Leonard Fournette, what did I say? He'd still be
So
used.
Lenny did get touchdowns.
Yeah. And he finally got him because if you guys don't know, it's been a big drought
only
for
had
Lenny.
1 prior to this game.
Yep, and now he just got 2 in this game. And, guys, what have I been saying about Leonard Fournette? And I said at the beginning of the year when DJ asked me about this, do I think Leonard Fournette will be more involved in the passing game? Yes, and look at this, 12 targets, 9 receptions, 62 yards. He gets you 15. 15 just in the passing game.
You know, and I asked it because I know they're saying this, and I want to believe them, but I don't trust Doug Moron. And he's got that hair trigger temper where it's like, oh, I'm just going to bench him because he picked his nose in a team meeting.
But his worst game has even been 5 targets. He's being targeted heavily this year.
So 9 for 62 through the air, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 97 yards on the ground. This was the game I wanted to... Like, I had a feeling in my keeper league, and I have Lenny in Dynasty as well. You guys can see how I get to that 199. This was the week I thought a lot of my guys were going to blow up. The only one I was wrong about was Julio, but I thought Lenny, I'm like, I think he's going to have a big game this week. Doug Marrone says they're going to focus on him. Unfortunately, it didn't help them win the game. And in the back of my mind, that always concerns me because I'm like, they're not winning with Lenny, so maybe they go away from him. But they didn't do that today, and it was a great output for him. D.D. Westbrook caught 8 catches for 69 yards. So he was fantasy relevant. Chris Conley was somewhat fantasy relevant, 4 catches for 49 yards. DJ Chark, 5 for 38. So we're telling you he's getting into that elite status, and then he lets us down, John. Are you concerned about that?
No. I just think he was facing a tough Tennessee defense, divisional rivalry. I just think that
in Tennessee as well.
In Tennessee, and I think he'll be fine. I mean, 8 points is bad for a guy who's been performing, but you got to see the positive about this. He still saw 6 targets. He's been seeing anywhere from 6 to 10 targets. He'll be fine. It's just this matchup, like we said before, Tennessee's defense is not that bad. They've gone down a little bit compared to what they were, but they're not horrible.
They're good. All right, John, what if I told you that the Dallas Cowboys played the New England Patriots in a game that could have been a fantasy bonanza and should have been a fantasy bonanza, but there were only really 3 fantasy relevant players in that game?
Yeah, I mean, you don't. My opinion, though, I just think the weather did have a factor in this, though. It made it tough.
It did, and the indication to that is that 2 of those fantasy relevant players were running backs, and Sony Michel and Ezekiel Elliott. And I guess I'll say 4 fantasy relevant players, but one of them you never were starting, and that's Jacoby Myers. And Jacoby Myers and Julian Edelman are basically running backs from where they catch the ball, and that's underneath. So very short pass, underneath, running game type of stuff here. Zeke had 21 carries for 86 yards, so pretty efficient on the ground. Actually, very efficient, especially considering playing New England, who I think was the number 2 or 1 team against running backs, and he also caught 4 catches for 40 yards. Zeke just provides a safe floor for you. And then, of course, Sony Michel, 20 carries for 85 yards. So while I say he was fantasy relevant, he didn't really get you to 10 points, but he had a pretty decent game. He did run at 4.3 yards per carry, which is encouraging.
No, watching the game, they just, like you were saying earlier before, Garrett just does bad play calling.
James White was trash in this one.
James White was barely used.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was even bad.
Tom Brady was trash. I'm telling you, Tom Brady, guys, the decline is here. And Dak Prescott sucked today. And Dak Prescott, John, doesn't have the best schedule down the stretch. I would be very worried if Tom Brady or Dak Prescott were my fantasy quarterbacks going into the playoffs. I'm just saying. You agree with that? Are you going to text the whole time? Or
No.
We got a podcast going on here. You going to start taking it seriously today?
Yes, I am taking
Appreciate
it seriously.
that.
Sorry.
Sometimes I got to beat him up, guys.
No, I just got to wrap up some holiday stuff.
All right, that's dynamite. All right, what do we got next on the docket there, Johnny boy? I think we're down to the Sunday night game and the incomparable bad man.
Oh, your game you love.
He's a bad man, all right. He's bad at football now, and that's Aaron Rodgers. 20 completions on 33 attempts for 104 yards, John. That's 3.2 yards per attempt. That is a bad running back. 3.2 yards per attempt is a really bad running back.
This defense, okay, here's the thing. They've been saying San Fran, have they faced the tougher teams? They faced a few, but now you're facing a contender, definitely a playoff contender. The Green Bay Packers, possibly a Super Bowl contender. And the 49ers proved here that they're the better team.
So, yeah, and that, like I started Aaron Rodgers and I still won, despite his buffoonery. I started him, and in my mind, I'm like, you know what? He's probably not going to have a good game. And we discussed it last week when we were doing starts and sits. But I can justify him having an okay game based on these certain things. And like I said, we discussed it last week, so I'm not going to go over those again. But there were some points that I had that could equate to him having a decent game. Didn't work out. And I didn't have high hopes. I'll be perfectly honest about that. That's why I said, you're not starting him, but here are the reasons that if you did, you could feel a little bit better about it. This was the worst. Actually, the worst case scenario was him not getting a touchdown, which he did throw into Devontae Adams.
Which who you have.
Who I also have. So this was almost the worst case scenario. Aaron Rodgers, John, next week, he has the Giants. If you have Aaron Rodgers right now, which I do, I'm not feeling good about things. But I have seen him have some great games this season. But I'm nervous about going into the playoffs with him. If he doesn't have a great game next week, John, against New York, I'm looking for other playoff options. Honestly.
New York should be a match he gets right, though. Have you ever seen Rodgers have 2 implode games, though? I wouldn't say this implode game. This was a bad
he's had
game.
Most of his season has been imploding games. He's been awful this year. He's been terrible. Have you been watching? I know you're not an owner of him,
but I'm just saying I'm not an owner of him, so I don't watch him as every
awful.
move. But I can definitely tell you what have I said before. This team has no number 2, and it's hurting them. Jimmy Graham.
I think it does have a number 2. I think MVS is a talented guy. They have Lazard. They have Allison. They have depth at the receiving position. And frankly, they have Jamal Williams, who caught 7 catches for 35 yards and also had 11 carries for 45 yards at 4.1 yards a carry. So guess what, John? Jamal Williams was once again more efficient than Aaron Jones, who had 13 carries for 38 yards. In case you're not good at math, that's 2.9 yards per carry. And he had only 1 target through the air, John. This is why, Aaron Jones finally earned his music last week. And he did everything he could to unearn it this week. Aaron Jones is fantasy. He's fantasy dynamite. He could blow up in your hand during the playoffs and cost you a win. And he makes me nervous, and I'm glad I don't own him. I actually traded him for Tyler Boyd in the offseason in Dynasty. And frankly, all year that's been looking like a bad deal for me. But at the end of the day, he just scares me. And here you see him against a tough defense and what happens. And it's ugly. And for Jamal Williams, John, to perform against this tough defense, it's just 1 week it's going to be Williams and 1 week it's going to be Jones, right?
It's a back and forth. You don't know who the number one back is anymore.
And Jones has become touchdown dependent as of late. It's not good, dude.
Plus, we don't know LaFleur's mindset. LaFleur. Maybe he's taken that approach going back and forth to keep him fresh.
The hot hand. Yeah.
Yeah, take the hot hand. Why? Because you have the playoffs coming up, too. Might as well have both backs for the playoffs instead of grounding and pounding one.
Well, I know who doesn't have the hot hand, and that's Aaron Rodgers. And the homeboy did get sacked 5 times, so that's not good either. And this offensive line is not protecting Aaron Rodgers, so that's a problem, too. If I don't see 30 to 40 fantasy points against the Giants, John, I'm looking for other options regarding Aaron Rodgers. I just am. Other side of the ball. Jimmy Garoppolo, handsome Jimmy, 253 yards and 2 touchdowns, which has been pretty common stat line for Garoppolo. He's been pretty consistent, had some clunkers, but this offense is good, man. Even when they're banged up, they're good. Tevin Coleman, 11 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 catches for 10 yards. Not a bad game there. Raheem Mostert got 6 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. So that's kind of what, and he also caught a pass for 22 yards. That's kind of what we were hoping to see from him the week before. Just didn't really happen.
Yeah, it stinks.
And even Jeff Wilson had 27 yards on 2 carries. So the running game looked really good this week, John. And then George Kittle just handing out stunners left and right.
George Kittle scared me when I heard he had a broken bone in his ankle.
Broken ankle. Yeah, that's how it was worded.
Yeah, but when
you read the headline, it said broken ankle.
It's actually a broken bone in his ankle. And what scares me about this, I thought, well, maybe he's going to play because he'll be a decoy. He was not a decoy here.
George Kittle don't do decoy.
I didn't think so.
He's
either.
A man. And you look at guys like A.J. Green, injury divas like A.J. Green, and then you look at guys like George Kittle that play with legitimate injuries that probably shouldn't play, and he gets 6 catches for 129 yards and a touchdown. That's a bad man right there. George Kittle is awesome.
First game back, 24 points.
Also, on my dynasty team. You guys see in the common denominator here? I got an all-star squad. Also on my keeper. Actually, I have him in all 3 leagues.
You have him all 3 leagues.
Yeah, so we're cooking with fire.
Because you were worried about that. You're like, I have him all 3.
I know. So look, you know who else I starting to get some good vibes on? A guy that I've been touting all year, Deebo Samuel, John. He only had 2 targets, which is a little bit worrisome. But he caught both of them for 50 yards and a touchdown. Deebo has been involved. And that's good to see. And I think next year, I told you, this guy's a superstar in the making. Little nervous about Emmanuel Sanders, 1 catch for 15 yards, but I just think he's still hurt. And I honestly think the team's 10-1, John. Might not be a bad idea to give him a rest, another day of rest.
Well, you know, they're 10-1, they're playoff bound. So now It's a matter of might as well just why wither him down when they're going. You know what I'm saying? Real playoffs, not fantasy playoffs. Yeah. Just let them rest. Get other people involved. I mean, be healthy for the real playoffs. And I think that's what they're doing. They're not using Sanders much.
I mean, they're probably nervous about the Saints, who are only 1 game back from them. And that's probably the real threat in terms of taking over that number 1 seed. I don't think there's really any other team in the NFC that's capable of doing that or close enough to do that. So I get that they're nervous about that, but don't the playoffs matter more? And you got a capable guy like Deebo Samuel, and you got a stud like George Kittle. If I were them, I would probably rest Emmanuel Sanders. You don't like that if you're a fantasy owner, but I mean, I just don't think it's a bad idea.
It's the right thing to do, though.
Interesting week this week, John. I can't wait for this coming week, the final week of the fantasy season, week 13, and then it's the playoffs. It's playoff time, and in our leagues, we go to week 16 on a Roto championship as well, so we keep playing right down the stretch.
Playoffs.
What we're not going to be playing on Wednesday, though, John. We're only going to do 2 shows this week. The recap show that we just did, and then the start-sit show for next week. So just 2 times this week, but thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.